Welcome back to the No Boring Stories. Oh man, I gotta just confirm first of all, is it Kaczynski?
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
phenomenal. Here we go.
actually, I am married now, so the name is changing, but my stage name is still Kaczynski.
Stage name. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kristen Kaczynski.
Yes.
Okay. It's on my mind. I have to do this now because I did a whole podcast where I was pronouncing the person's name wrong, and then I felt like a total ass at the end, and I'm like, I
Been
just
there.
need. So
And I'm a podcaster too, as you know, and
yes,
it always happens where like you hit record and you start to say the person's name, and then you realize, oh, I don't actually know for sure
yeah,
if this is how it's pronounced.
like exactly what just happened. Excellent. Okay,
And then you can't stop the train.
thankfully, we have the ability to edit. So we'll start. We don't actually start until I say hi to you, anyways. So this is just my way of rolling in. So, look, all right. Hey, I'm Alex Street. This is No Boring Stories, and we've got a phenomenal guest today. It's going to be lots of joy and conversation with Kristen Kaczynski. Kristen, how are you today?
I'm so good. I'm
Oh,
feeling great today.
amazing. I can see it in your face. I can hear it in your voice. This is it's going to be good. So look, we're here. I'm so interested in hearing your journey and how you get to do what you do. And ultimately, the story isn't about how, it isn't about what, it's about why you do what you do. And we will dive into that. But first, we got to talk about some of your favorite stories that you told
Okay.
me about earlier. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna lay these out in the way that you said them because I think it's just so
Yeah.
great. There's Harry Potter,
Mhm.
obviously.
Yeah.
You said it's your childhood favorite, but do you really mean like it's your current favorite, or no? Or did
I
you
mean,
leave that back in the past?
it always has a special place in my heart. I think I watch
Yeah.
the films almost every year. Yeah,
Did
and
you
I've read
grow
all the
up with them?
books multiple times. Oh yeah, yeah.
Like you
Actually,
aged as they aged? Like what that was?
I
You
think I
know what
was
I
a
mean?
little younger.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, I was born in '94. But my sister read the books to me. How cute is that?
Oh, come on. That's the friggin' dream as a parent.
That was like our one big bonding moment of our childhood.
Did she do the voices? Did you do Hagrid? Like, oh, Harry? Like, was she getting right into it, or no?
She was a more monotone reader, like just the facts. But
Mhm.
I do remember, and it's still like it makes my heart tickle, right? I still remember that she mispronounced because she was a kid too, right? She's only a couple years older than me.
Yeah.
She mispronounced like every name in the book pretty
Right.
much. And then we went and saw the film and we were like, oh.
Oh, it's not Hermione. Oh,
Exactly. Or Hagrid.
Hagrid. Yeah. Ron. No, Ron's pretty easy.
Ron's pretty
Yeah.
easy.
Man, that's fun. I love that. I mean, that's what I've now. I'm on my fourth read through for whichever one of my kids. The first time I read it through was to my wife. Like it was, and I fully get into it. It's my acting background where I'm like, I take great pride in like which voice is which, and like the movies are only reference for me to do the voice of to make their voice sound better. So that's it. But I love that.
I love that.
Yeah. So okay. So Harry Potter, and then you've got
Mhm.
the Guy Ritchie's films.
Mhm.
So I mean, we're talking Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels, like
Mhm.
Snatch,
Yeah,
Sherlock Holmes. Like
actually,
what?
I really love the newest one. I think it's called The Gentleman.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I've
That's,
I've been watching that on repeat pretty
oh
much.
yeah.
What I love about his work is it's like twisty turny, like you kind of don't really know what's happening the whole time, and there's like multiple stories happening all at once, which I think
Yeah.
kind of speaks to human life, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's always very interesting to me to see how it all comes together and like what you never really know what the ending is with his
Is
films,
that
or at least I
okay?
don't.
So let's play with that for just a second because I think
Yeah.
that this is important for people who see their life as boring or their story as boring, and yet that's exactly it. You're like, yeah, no, these movies are so interesting. Now there's a pace to them that is like, again, unique, and the way that they structure he structures his movies for sure. But the fact that you don't know what's going on, really, you're kind of trying to predict it as you go. And
Yeah.
yet it all seems to kind of come together in some weird and wacky way at the end.
Yeah, and I mean, there's subconscious reasons for this, right? Because like there's
Yeah.
open loops and there's different storylines, and so there's a science to it. But when you kind of let go of that, because if we know anything about stories or how the
Yeah.
subconscious mind works, we understand what's happening. But if you kind of like let that fade into the background, you're just like immersed in this whole other world.
Mm,
And to me, it's such a mirror for life, because as much as we want to try and control and predict life and predict the ending of something,
yeah.
and we can definitely set our intentions and, if we have a spiritual connection, connect with our higher power to guide us through that. But at the end of the day, we don't have control, or as much control as we think we do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Nope, that's it. You nailed it. That's exactly what I was like thinking. I was like, whoa. There's something found in this. And it is that letting go and enjoying, embracing, kind of just, you said you watch these movies, you enter into another world, but I think that's it, without going like being as, non-abstract as possible. I think it's actually about kind of letting go of the control and being fully immersed in this world, in
Mm,
your own story, and seeing that this day is the day. Like, this is what you
yeah.
get. This is the moment. This is the page that we're on. Um, and yet we spend so much time trying to think about the future, worried about the future, fearful of the future, of what the next page will be, or regretful of what the last page was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I sense, and I'm already picking this up from you, but I sense that you are, you put a lot of effort into being fully present on this page, in this moment. Is that true?
Absolutely. And that's a learned skill. That is
Yeah.
not something that came naturally to me, especially as I started my business. I am a business owner.
Hmm.
Um, Especially as a business owner, there is all of this pressure to focus on what's next,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And,
Exactly.
we do live in a physical world, so we do have to do a little planning, right?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Fine. All right.
But at the
you know.
same time, and we can kind of get into my story a bit as it flows, but
Yeah, we
at the
will.
same time, as business owners, if we're too focused on the planning and we miss what's right in front of us, then we can get into this endless chase of like the
Mm,
next goal or the next event we want to speak at or the
mm,
next marketing platform we're going to introduce to our business or whatever it is. And we tend to miss all that we've already built
mhm,
and all that's already here.
mm. I was literally just going through. I'm doing this exercise for my business coach, is coaching me, and saying you need to go through your entire list of all of the people that you've coached, whether free, like in a group, whatever it is, and just write them out and get that list going. Because at this moment I have, folders, and I have ideas of like, yeah, I think it's been this month, this many people. I am certainly not the one who keeps it all organized as much as I maybe quote unquote should. And so just going through that exercise, as you talk about this, of like celebrating where we've come from, celebrating how we've moved, what we've done, um, it it just brings this extra level of joy to, wow, like, am I really here? Did this happen? Did all of that happen? And now I'm here. And now, yeah, I'm worried about what's next, or I'm wondering what's next. But can we also be thankful for what happened and move forward in the story as that goes? And I think that's the effort, isn't it?
That's the work, right?
That's the work.
And speaking to the presence aspect of it, when you're in the present moment and when you train yourself, because for a lot of us, it's not natural the way
Hmm.
our world is set up, the way we're raised, because of childhood trauma and various other things. It's not natural for us to be present, or it doesn't feel safe at first to be present.
Yeah.
But when we train ourselves to feel safer and safer in the present moment, we actually realize that that is the safest place to be evolved.
Wow.
Because fear, as I've come to understand it, lives in the past and it lives in the future.
Mm.
But unless you're quite literally in a fearful situation in this now moment, let's assume you're listening to this podcast in your car or at home, somewhere where you're relatively safe and you're cared for, there's no immediate threat to your survival in this exact moment, then we get to realize that we are always safe. It's just our mind that makes us think that we're not, unless of course there is an actual threat right in front of you right now.
Right. Okay, well, let's look. You've clearly got this wisdom and this insight into all of this, and I would love to find out why. Where does that come from? What is this? So first, let's start with this. Like, Kristen, what do you do? I mean, we haven't even touched on this yet, but what is it right now? 2022, as you show up to me now on the podcast, what do you do, and what's the impact that you're seeing from that?
Yeah. So I am a spiritual business and mindset coach, and I'm certified in a bunch of modalities. You can go to my website and find out about all of those. But the work I do now is really helping people to realize that they are enough right now. And of course, we want to grow and improve and change. And of course, we want to expand our businesses. I work with business owners specifically. But until we are able to recognize and witness our own innate worthiness, we're going to be in this constant chase. We're going to be in this constant fear spiral.
It's just so interesting. It's exactly what this is the thing, right? It's exactly this piece of presence of like, you're good enough right now, is what you just said. You're helping business owners realize that you're good enough right now.
Yeah.
Which then allows them to do what?
To build. And this was coming through for me. I don't know if you're a divine download type of person, but this is coming through for me right before we hopped on this. And it just was so clear that I'm actually going to read it. I wrote it down in my notes here. So we're talking about this feeling enough now, right? Yeah. And knowing that you're enough now. And what I've come to understand about this is we have to be able to accept what is, like what's here now, as good enough in order to open up to making it even better.
Such a fine balance, isn't it? How can this be good enough if I'm also thinking about what could be better? Then this inherently isn't good enough if there's a better, is where my mind goes with that. And we can dive into, let's play in this a little bit, play in the sandbox here. So open that up for me.
So the way I experience it, and it may be different for other people, but this is just my own personal experience. If I look through the lens, let's say myself as a business owner, if I look through the lens at myself as not being good enough, then I only find more ways to prove to myself that I'm not good enough, because that is the lens I'm looking through. That is the aperture that I can see. But if I'm able to see myself from this lens of I'm already good enough, I'm already worthy, I already have everything that I need, then there's this empowerment, this opening that I like viscerally feel. I feel this on a physical level to what else could be possible. So you can think of it as like looking at the lens of scarcity at yourself or at your business versus looking through the lens of abundance.
Yeah.
And it's hard when you're the money maker, right? It's hard when you make your own money, but that's why this work is so powerful for business owners, because again, we cannot control every detail. We can do the things, we can do the marketing and the sales. Yeah. But at the end of the day, there's other people buying from us, and we can't like force them to buy from us. So there has to be this trust.
So what came to mind for me there. So I used to be a youth pastor for 15 years or something. And so, and one of the I guess theological beliefs or teachings that I really bumped up against often and could not comprehend and could not stick with and couldn't teach was the idea of original sin. And there's this, right? There's this teaching, there's this, that you come into the world broken and are therefore looking for and searching for redemption or healing from that. And one of the most freeing ideas for me was learning that actually, like, one of the most like long held beliefs and teachings is not about original sin. I think it's specifically in Jewish teaching. It's this original, or like in the Hebrew teaching was original goodness. It's original goodness, and then we face up against brokenness, and then that's the human condition. Now we got to figure out what we do with this as we make our choices and decisions along the way.
Yeah.
But this idea of original goodness is just what came to mind when you said you're already there.
Yeah.
And I think for so many of us, we're walking around with this like, I'm broken. How do I get out of this? But it sounds like what you're helping people understand is, what if that is the lie? And the truth is you're already good. And we get to build on that.
Absolutely.
And if you do that, you're right. It's limitless. What else is possible? What else can I do if I'm this good? Wow. And I'm part of a creative story. I'm part of an ongoing creation.
Absolutely.
Let's get to it. Let's create.
Well, and I think it's like, if you're a business owner listening to this, just run through your typical thoughts each day about like what's running in your mind all day long. Is that client going to pay that invoice? This invoice is late, or am I going to make the amount of money I need to pay all my vendors, or whatever it is, right? And we have all of these stories that just spin and spin and spin in our mind. And then when we show up from our marketing, sometimes we can come from the energy of, is this live stream going to be good enough to help me meet my launch goal? Or am I going to be able to speak in the way that I want to speak? And again, it's coming from that energy of assuming somewhere on a deep subconscious level that you are not good enough for what you desire. So if we take that assumption away, and of course there's deeper work to this, but just play with us for a second. If we take that assumption away, that there's anything to prove, that you need to pay your dues or achieve something first in order to get what you want, that you need some other skill, or other people are better than you. And if we just assume that you're already good enough for everything you want to happen in your business, can you like feel like the exhale that comes with that, and like the spaciousness, and over time, the confidence that comes with that. And then it ripples out, right? So when you show up with that confidence, then you're already more interesting to people. Then you're already someone that people want to work with, because they see your confidence. They see that you love what you do. They see that you know what you're talking about, and there's nothing to prove.
Yeah.
They can feel it.
And we're so afraid of that because we think that confidence, we've been taught so many ways that confidence is arrogance. And there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. And I think, but what's holding back from doing what you're saying there is, if I just believe that I'm good enough, then I show up, then it breeds confidence. It shows people that I'm confident in my work, that I believe in what I do. I trust that this is going to transform people, and therefore it will. But for those of us, and I'm assuming this is in your story, but we're going to dive into this, but there's this teaching that actually, if you talk about yourself that way, or if you see yourself that way, or if you show up that way, then you will come across as prideful, as arrogant, and that's not how we live. So it's this false humility that we get taught that actually holds us back from being who we're supposed to be now, that I have seen, and I think builds on what you're saying here, and is going to be just what you're teaching here is already going to free people.
Like, who am I to get these clients, right? Like, who am I to just receive clients?
Yeah.
Who am I to talk about stuff I love online and get paid for it? We have all of these complexes about being unworthy of what we want, and it's endless.
So this idea of seeing that you're already good enough, what's one word that you would use to kind of wrap that up? Like what's that, what is that feeling when you feel like that? Whole?
The word that came to mind was love, but whole also resonates. Also peace.
Yeah.
Because it's like this energy of okayness. Like, there's nothing to fix. No one needs you. There's nothing you have to perform or be in this moment, but you just are safe being who you are.
I just love it when it's like we use all these like fancy descriptors and whatever, and then you come out with this, like, I don't know, it's like okayness. Like, it's just so It just seems so simple and so basic, and that is exactly it. That's what we need just to get the point across. Is like, oh, yeah, I get that actually.
Yeah.
Like
Like
it's
right
okay.
now, everything is okay.
It's okay.
And that could even be like an affirmation for you if you're struggling to feel this. It's like, you know what? Right now, I'm okay. And everything is okay. And maybe
if you're
there's a
not, then it's
bill,
okay to not be okay.
that too. Yeah. Yeah. And maybe there's a bill coming up in a month or something, or whatever it is, like in the future that we're afraid of. But can you come back to now, and can you find a sense of okayness in the now?
So let's get into it a little bit, because that, if that's how you are helping people, that's clearly the state that you are living in right now. That was a good one. Let's try that again. If that is how you're helping people now, and that is clearly the state that you are living in, Kristen, this state of peace, love, wholeness, okayness now, and helping other people experience that as well, so that they are more fit and free to show up.
Mhm.
Where does that idea begin for you? Like early on, where was that in your childhood? Where did this idea of peace, there should be peace, I want peace, I desire peace, like, was it there? Was it not there? Did you have to learn that? What did that look like for you early on? Where did that begin?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you were a youth pastor. I was raised Catholic.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is a very specific faith.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a good way to say it.
Now I'm more open.
Yes,
and I'm more spiritual.
Yes,
I would say less religious.
Yeah.
Personally. Not that there's anything wrong with religion, but that's just my personal beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say back in childhood, my story is I was taught not to be myself. And I think we all are to a certain extent. I was taught not to be myself. I was taught that who I naturally am is too much, or who I naturally am is not enough, or who I naturally am is too loud, or who I naturally am is demanding too much of the world, right? I was a very like entitled, like 3-year-old even. Like I just had this sense of like, oh yeah, people should take care of me. People should give me things. Everything works out for me. And now that's like one of my favorite qualities about myself, because it does allow me to have this deeper trust and to be able to kind of like flow through life. But in the beginning, I was taught that everything about myself was wrong or needed to be changed. And not because
how does that like show up specifically? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is there like, you're dancing at a Christmas party or something and somebody says, not now, like, you know what I mean? Like, what comes to mind when you think of like, I was taught this? Is there a moment that shows up in your mind to demonstrate that?
Yeah. So I want to be clear. I don't blame my parents, but it often happens with our parents, right? Because our parents are humans too. They have their own stuff. But for me, like one of the clearest memories was I am a very emotional person. I have a very sensitive heart. And this is something that has been true for me since birth. And I had 2 parents who didn't understand how to hold a child in big emotions. And so like if, I don't know, something silly, like let's say my sister like wore my socks or something, and you're like 3 years old or something. So you're like freaking out because someone took your socks. And it's this big dramatic thing to a 3-year-old. And I would cry because I was a sensitive being, and I am very emotional, and I'm okay with my emotionality now. But back then they couldn't handle it. So they would say, stop crying, or like, there's no reason why you should be crying. You're going to make yourself sick. Stop crying. It's not that big a deal. Develop a thicker skin. You got to be stronger. You got to be this, you got to be that. And I understand the purpose of all of those messages, but when you're a crying 3-year-old, all you really need is love.
Yeah.
And then the crying stops.
Yeah. It is. I'm hearing this, and I'm going into my own experiences, which I think a lot of people will. And I'm also going into me as a parent. So I've got a 9, 12, and 15-year-old, and I've experienced all of that, and specifically with some of them more than others. Those moments, those very, at times it has a negative connotation, but it's an explosive emotion. It's something that just seems to explode. It feels like it comes out of nowhere. And as parents, we're like, what just happened? And we're going through, trying to get ready for school or something. And now all of a sudden the boot doesn't fit and you're explosive. And I'm in my own state of mind trying to accomplish something. And this then is a disruption to my plan. And that's where, as we've figured this out, we've gone through this and we're still experiencing it. It's this recognition as a parent to go, oh, I'm frustrated or trying to mold or twist or form their emotional response because I want something right now. And that's as you said, it's like, I don't blame them. It's just what was going on. But I'm realizing that. And again, for the parents listening to this, like there's just something in that and recognizing that it's so difficult because they're doing their own thing. And I have my own ideas of what I want to happen right now. And somehow I try to control it. I'm trying to control the other person. That's what it is. And in that, you're saying, you go through that, and sure, that was what was going on. And you are receiving these messages of, it's not appropriate. It's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And every child is different. Every person is different. And so what may have taught me it's not safe to be emotional may not have taught my sister
for sure
the same thing. Right. So we all have different ways we receive experiences. And for the parents out there, you're off the hook. There's no possible way you can avoid molding your child in some way. So just kind of like, let yourself off the hook a little bit and realize that they'll do their own inner work eventually. And it's not your fault, because
I keep talking to my 15-year-old being like, I'm excited for like when you get on a call with a coach like me who says, tell me about your childhood, or like, let's go back to childhood, and like, what comes up, what moments are it going to be? And I know I'm going to be shocked. I'm going to be surprised if you ever tell me or whatever, but like, what a ride. It's all intertwined there, but let's focus specifically. Okay. So you're learning that early on, there's something about big emotions. Let's shrink those down. Let's bring those in, rein those in.
Yeah. And there was a lot of like, I guess I'll use the word mantras or like affirmations in my household of like what we should be like. So like always get straight A's, like always get good grades so you can get into a good college. And another one that comes to mind, my dad used to say, because it's just me and my sister, right? So my dad is raising 2 girls, and he used to say, boys only want one thing. And it was like this big dramatic like thing that he would say all the freaking time in my childhood. Yeah. And so those messages, when you are still a young child and you don't have the ability to do more, I guess, adult type reasoning, right? Because as an adult, you can reason through that and say, oh, well, that's not ultimately true, right? It's not ultimately true that men only want women for their bodies, right? Men also want to hang out with women and talk to them and start a family with them and take care of them and whatever it is, right? But when you're a child, you don't have that ability to reason through something so absolute and to like understand that there's a deeper truth there. And so you just accept it as true, especially since it's coming from someone you trust, like a parent. So when you're being told these things over and over again, the way our brains work is you're actually programming your subconscious mind to see something as truth. And this is where all of our limiting beliefs come from.
Wow. So what began to be formed? What limiting beliefs began to be formed in your life? Yeah.
So
again, like taking this forward through like, are you still 6 years old in your mind as you, no, just like through your like junior high years. I'm talking like middle school, like take me through the journey a little bit, like as you're forming, as you're hearing this stuff, like, how does that show up? Yeah,
Well, it shows up
as you go.
as not trusting men for me. That's I'm married now and to an amazing man. But
Sure.
in my childhood and my teenage years, it showed up as not trusting men or, you know, having the belief that they only wanted one thing.
Mhm.
So, not believing that I was worthy of an emotional connection
Hmm.
from men
Yeah.
because the operating system that my brain was running on was, well, they don't want that from me.
Yeah.
So I'm not worthy of that.
So if you're thinking about this, who you were kind of
Mhm.
then, and there's this, I know like you're this emotionally expressive human. And over years, you're taught certain things about other people, the way that other people are going to act or supposed to act, and the way that you're supposed to act around other people. There's like this
Mhm.
forming and this teaching. Again, let's like we did with like, where you are now. Is there a way that you could contain that? You could frame that in a word that you think of like how did you feel in that time?
Unworthy, I guess, would be the
Mm,
word. Because the deeper truth of that, if
yeah,
we're following the thread down. So
sure.
if the truth is men don't want an emotional connection with me and I'm attracted to men, then
Hmm.
the deeper truth of that is I'm unworthy of love. And that is debilitating for a human. We cannot
Hmm.
function with optimally, like we can get through
Yeah,
life, but we cannot function optimally if we believe we are unworthy of love.
yeah,
And I had experiences that reflected that back to me too, right?
right.
Because our subconscious is so powerful that we will actually make decisions that will lead us back to proving that to ourselves is true.
Yeah, yeah. You create the evidential proof, right? Yeah.
We do. Yeah.
And so as that shows up for you, so here you are again, right? This like beautiful, right? Originally good, like human being. You show up in the world and you're taught that it's not like who you are is outside the box. And we need you to be in the box,
Mhm.
essentially. And in that, you are forming this, okay, well, then I guess I'm unworthy. So that unworthiness, and then you're saying, like, this shows up, and then I create the proof, I create the evidence to prove that to be so. Um, Take me through a little bit then. How does that show up, or take me through the journey of, yeah, then you go through high school, you get like, what's college for you? Where do you start to develop? And like, what are your passions starting? How are they starting to show up? Like, well, maybe this is what I want to do with my life. How does that all kind of play out? And just paint that picture a little bit for me.
Yeah. So I think I've never really thought about this, but now that you're painting the picture for me, I think all of the absolutism and like this is how things are of my childhood caused me to desire a career that would allow me to be whoever the hell I want to be.
Yep.
So I always had like a knowing in my heart or somewhere deep in my soul that I would start my own business.
Hmm.
And I didn't know what it would look like. I had lots of different ideas of what it could look like. And so I always kind of knew I was not going to be in a corporate job, although I have been there as well. I had a couple of
Hmm.
years in corporate. Um, but that was actually the catalyst for starting my business. I was afraid, I was fearful of starting a business and the risk and the exposure that comes with that as you put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And so I went into corporate as like a safety mechanism, as like a way to protect myself and to find a sense of safety and to be able to make money and to be able to, start my adult life.
Like, did you like go to school for accounting and then went into
Economics.
yeah, okay. So this is
Yeah.
what's so fascinating to me when people are like, yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe I'm supposed to do something. And then we
Mhm.
commit 2, 3, 4 years of our lives to being educated in that thing that we think we're supposed to do. And then we get into that
Yeah.
supposed to, and you're in it for 2 years.
Yeah, I was in it for 3, so
There you
almost.
go. Yeah.
But yeah, and it was interesting. I tried a bunch of different things. So I had an economics degree, And then I went into media, which is kind of closer to what I do now. And I just remember being in corporate and I felt like suffocated. And not that being in a corporate job is bad, right? Like some people really thrive in that setting. They like the
For sure.
stability of it.
Yeah.
But for me, and I think because of probably my childhood conditioning, I just kept feeling like, is this all there is? Like, I looked ahead at like the CEO who, you know, was 30 years older than me. And he was doing essentially the same things that I was doing, just, you know, he had a more important title and was talking to more important people. And I just kept feeling suffocated. I kept feeling like there has to be more. There has to be more.
Suffocated is so interesting.
I know. But that's literally how I felt. Like I would go to work and I would sit there and I like couldn't breathe sometimes. I'm a very physical person, as you may have guessed.
Very aware. Now, is that similar? Have you ever experienced a panic attack? Is that a similar sort of sensation, or?
I think a panic attack is a lot more intense, and I have had those before as well. But this is just like a general feeling of like going to work and feeling constricted. Going to work and feeling like I couldn't be myself, going to work and feeling like I had to perform, going to work and feeling like people expected things of me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really be who I am. And of course, that's all connected back to what we talked about.
Come on, Kristen. It's too good. Exactly. This is it. Like, it's just this beautiful movement to really, it's almost like you're like, what I'm hearing here and what I see consistent in a lot of people's stories, honestly, is something happens and something's formed, and then we're kind of testing it all through teenage years, et cetera. And then we get into this, early mid-20s, and we lean into that personality. We say, well, I think that this is who I am. Therefore, I will perform and be this. And like, give it everything that I have, because my goodness, the thing that I crave in this world is some sort of certainty, some sort of predictability. You look to your parents, you're like, that's what they had mostly, maybe a little bit, or at least their grandparents. And so maybe I can create that. And this is the time when I'm supposed to grow up and do that. But what you're actually doing is you're really like doubling down, like stepping into this almost false identity, this thing that you have accepted.
Yeah.
That isn't
and that's
true.
why it feels so wrong for so many people. That's why so many people feel like they're not where they want to be in life, because we just accepted this false identity and we never looked closer beneath the surface to find out who we really are and what we're really put on this earth to do.
So for you, that you were in that constricted environment for 2-3 years. Some people are in that for 20 or 30 years. What shifted? What helped you change?
This is kind of cliche. But
I'm sorry, say that again. This is what?
I said, this is kind of cliche.
Okay, great.
But I turned 25 and I just looked at my life. I looked at what my corporate life had been for the past 3 years. And I looked ahead to the future and I'm like, okay, you know, we're going to have kids around 30-ish, you know, a little after 30. That was our plan, me and my boyfriend, now husband. I'm 25 now. I got 5 years before we, you know, seriously settle down and think about raising other humans. Now is the time, right? If I'm going to take a risk, now is the time. And so it was really just, I think, just a come to Jesus moment of some sort, where I realized, okay, if I continue on this path, this is what my life continues to be. If I want to take a risk, I'm choosing to see this time as the optimal time for me to do it. But you can do it later in life. Like there's no rule that says you can't take a risk at 40 or whatever, or 60 or 80.
Yeah.
So, but for me, it was turning 25 and realizing, okay, we live pretty cheaply now. My responsibilities are pretty minimal. If there's ever a time to take a risk and start a business, that time is now.
Now is the time. So there's still this, did somebody help you see that? You know, like I'm just such a firm believer that like, and then I realized is either great. I was in a, a sweat shack and had my own sort of like enlightening moment. That could be I was by myself. But most often it's you saw somebody or somebody said something, or somebody has tipped you off that kind of, just nudged you on that path 1% that now is a lot more.
Yeah. So that person for me, her name is Vanessa Lau, and I think she's now like a multi 7-figure entrepreneur. I'm not quite at that level, but we're working toward it. But she was around my age. I think she was 24 at the time that I turned 25, and she had made 6 figures in her business, and she had like just started her business like a year prior in the same industry that I'm in. And so I looked at her and I looked at myself and I was like, hey, I'm pretty smart. Like I can figure stuff out. I can do this. I see an example of someone doing what I want to do, and I'm willing to take a bet on myself to see if I can do it too.
That's just the business piece. That's where you're like, great, I'll go launch a business. Did you have an idea of what you were going to do at that point? Was it clear?
It's been an evolution. Obviously, I do something completely different now.
How far away are we from that? I mean, how many years down?
Like, I started my business 2.5 years ago, so not far at all.
Okay. And so, so you start and 2.5 years ago, you have this, you quit your job, that was 25.
Yeah. And it's actually, I was 25, and it's actually interesting because now I'm a spiritual mindset coach, right?
Yeah.
For business owners. At that time, I was not spiritual at all.
Right.
But as I reflect back, knowing what I know now and experiencing what I've experienced now, the exact moment that I decided within myself, I'm quitting my job, I am going after this business, the exact moment my now husband found out that we had subsidized housing available to us in Long Island, New York for our next move. And it's ridiculous. It's like $600 or something per month.
Right.
So like everything, like divine timing, everything lined up for me when I was willing to take that risk. And back then I was like, oh my gosh, this is cool. But now I'm like, oh no, I was meant to be here.
So, okay. And then just clarify for me a little bit. How do you go in 2.5 years from someone who's like, I'm not spiritual at all to I'm a spiritual coach? Like, this is how I lead people.
Well, and that's the real story, isn't it? So the business, I started out much the same way I operated my whole life. I was trying to be a person. I was trying to be a role. I was trying to be a business owner. I wasn't allowing myself to be myself. And it's because I didn't feel safe to be myself.
Yeah.
So I, hired business coaches, mentors, and learned all the marketing and sales strategies. And I did have some initial success, 100%. But I just found myself in this constant roller coaster ride. Like I would make some money, sign some clients, feel really good. And then it would only last for like a day or two. And then I felt like I was back at the bottom starting over, and I would have to like build myself back up to be able to sign another client, make the money, all the things that we have to do as business owners. And I originally thought the answer was, okay, learn more marketing strategies. But it's tying it all back together. It was still looking at it through the lens of, I'm not good enough for this business anyway.
Yeah.
And I was using the strategy to like prove to myself and to the world, like, look, I'm good enough.
Yep.
Look, I know how to market myself. I'm good enough now. Can you guys see how good enough I am? And then the pandemic hit. And then, as I think the whole world did, I dropped into like a deep fight or flight freeze trauma response.
Yeah.
For a couple months. And then I finally woke up and realized this isn't working. I cannot keep burning myself out. I cannot keep trying to prove something. I cannot keep using strategy to prove to myself that I'm good enough. I need to actually be able to feel that within myself.
Mm. And so that it is interesting, right? Because you could be like, look, yeah, we could spend the whole podcast looking at just this 2 years and like how you've
Yeah.
grown and evolved through that. And for me, I actually see this as like, yeah, okay. And then this happened, then you just leaned into spirituality, you totally opened yourself up to it, and look at you now. And you found all the results, you're seeing the results, you're helping other people, they're seeing results. And so of course, now you're here as a spiritual business coach.
Yeah.
Of course. So like I don't mean to it's not about minimizing or poo-pooing what has
Right.
happened. For me, as I see the story, and you keep saying it's brilliant. You're like, to tie it all back, it all ties in together. Of course it does, because the way you're showing up now as this, what words did we use? Peace, love,
Okayness.
okayness. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like there's this feeling of okay. But that has grown. That has shown, and it's not something new for you. That is, again, let's go back to early on. That is who you were. That was then facing this barrier of, can I be that in the world? And as you were taught, you can't. Your okay is not okay. So then what do? Now you're constricted. Now you're boxed in. Now you're contained. There's systems. There's a way to go about it. And as you went into that and add, what's the word? Admiringly? No, it's admirable how you maybe, leaned into that and said, fine, okay, well, I'll try that. I'll just be what I'm supposed to be then for 25 years until there's this moment of, I can't breathe. I'm recognizing that this is not how it's supposed to be. This is not okay. And there's this news that we have subsidized housing, and there's evidence that somebody else my age is doing something like this. Maybe I will be okay if I leap, if I step. Like it's this like coming back to use your word, it's coming back to this okayness. And as you do that, now your business is thriving, absolutely skyrocketing, because you're showing up in your most full sense and teaching others to do the same.
Yeah. Yeah. It is like it's the thread of my life. It's the theme of my life. And obviously now that's why I do what I do, because it just kept showing up. And I have the feeling, I have this belief about our life purpose, that it will keep showing up until you accept it as your calling. And in some ways it may show up as like a negative experience or something that maybe feels bad in the moment, but it's actually trying to guide you back to what you were put on this earth to do over and over and over again. And until you fully claim it, it's just going to keep showing up.
Yeah. Well, I am fascinated to even know, and a lot of people are like, wow, it sounds so cool. How do you do that? And I think that's so we've leaned so much into the why here, and it's beautiful. And your story is again, the transformation I see is it's something around, from constricted or contained to open and peace, ultimately okay. And okay, it's so interesting because it almost like it feels like like that's a minimal place to be, and yet we're talking about it as this like actual like beautiful expression of this feeling.
Yeah, it's like it's an acceptance of what is, right? It's like everything's okay. I accept myself in this moment. I accept what's here. I'm not going to fight against what is.
Yeah.
It's all okay, and I'm going to choose what I do now, right? Like I'm going to choose my intentions and how I go about my business and go about the world, and I'm going to, follow my heart in that. And at the same time, it's so much of it is out of my control.
Yeah.
And so if I can accept that it is out of my control and I have to rely on something much bigger than me, and I am spiritual, so if I can accept that there's something much bigger than me weaving the fabric of my life, then it all is okay. Because I believe that presence loves me.
It's so Your joy is just so palpable. I love it. And it comes from this. It's so clear.
Yeah.
This is what I love, right? We take 40 minutes here and explain your story, and now who you are, how you showed up at the beginning makes so much more sense to all of us listening. We're like, oh, that's of course. Of course that's who she is. Because this is the journey she's been on. And so I'm so thankful for you, for your time here, and for sharing your not boring perspective, your not boring teaching, and this not boring story of going from contained to open. And if anybody listening is feeling like they're in this place of, no, I just have to keep driving forward, I just have to do what's expected of me, I need more strategy, I feel like there's a way to do it, and I have to succeed at that, all those things that you were saying, but they desperately want to feel what you're feeling right now, what you're talking about, this, it is okay because I am loved. If they are expecting or desiring that kind of a transformation, then we got to know, how do they find you, and how do they start a conversation about that?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me, by the way, before I go on. So there's the free stuff all over the internet. I have a podcast.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say going from constricted to open. My podcast is called Soul Expansion Podcast.
Yes.
So that expanding into who you really are is, again, the whole fabric of my life and the whole fabric of my business now. So Soul Expansion Podcast. I also have a bunch of online digital products and memberships that can be found at my website. And I also do private coaching and have a mastermind where you get a lot of private access to me. So for especially multiple 6-figure plus business owners who, they've accomplished the things and then they're still feeling like they're in that fear state in their business.
Yeah.
I go deeper with people in my private coaching, and, we get you to a place of feeling good in the now, because I don't know about you, but I did not start my business to feel like a prisoner to my business. I started my business for freedom. And that's actually found within ourselves. So that's what I do. And my website is KristenKaczynski.com, by the way.
Yeah. And oh man, you just feeling good in the now. That's where we started. That's where we are. That's what you're living. And I am so grateful for who you are, how you showed up here today, how you show up every day, and the impact that you're making in this world. Thank you for helping people expand and feel and know that they are good in the now.
Thank you so much.